Hey, welcome everybody to the Design for Living Big Book Study by Janine and myself. I'm Bill and I'm an alcoholic. That's Janine and she's an alcoholic.
Hi. There you go.
So today we're going to get into the last piece of We Agnostics and into the original manuscript. I don't know if you guys online have it, but we have it printed out here. I have 40 copies for the people in house. You won't need it right this moment, but if you want to hand it out, Audrey, go for it. And we'll get started with a prayer and some readings. And we are going to start on page 53. Arrived at this point, which we did touch on last week, but we're going to touch on it again and then kind of keep going. Hello, Creator. It's your grandkid. It's your grandkid, Bill. Thank you, Creator, for this beautiful day. I ask for your guidance today, and I'm pulling up what needs to be pulled up. It's been a tough 3 weeks with me quitting smoking, and I feel really tired, and I just ask for your energy and your guidance, Creator. I kind of am a bit confused with what my body's going through, but I don't want to give up and feel like a strong pull to pick up a smoke, but I ask for your stronger push to push me in the right direction. Creator, I ask for your guidance in the study. I ask that you remove everything that I think I know about myself, about you, about your kids, and this book and this program for a new experience for all of it. Creator, I'm so grateful for my life today, and I thank you for everything that you do for me. I thank you for my friend Janine and the friendship that we have and the people in this room, and Tamara, who runs our computer and online portions and does our editing. Creator, I'm just so grateful for everything that you do and the people that you place in my path, and just want to extend my love to all the people out there who still suffer and in the room who are suffering. Hi.
God, thank you for tonight. Thank you for everybody who traveled to be with us and for everybody online. I pray for my family tonight and for my friends and for myself. And I just want to say I'm tired of being in uncertainty, and I'm tired of waiting for a resolve, and I am scared. And because of my friends and my faith, I'm able to show up tonight and put that aside. Help me over the next couple of weeks to stay positive so that I can carry the message. Because when life gets tough, that's when we got to show that this really does work and that there's a solution to be found here, despite what life is throwing at us. Amen.
Okay, awesome. Let's do this. Okay. We're going to start at the middle of 53 again. We've already been here before on this. And so at the top of this page, it talks about logic. It's great stuff, right? We liked it and we still like it. It's not by chance that we're given the power to reason, to examine the evidence of our senses, to draw conclusions. That is one of man's magnificent attributes. A little bit further down, with a proposal which does not lend itself to reasonable approach and interpretation. So what that's saying is God gave us our minds, our senses, and to use reasonable approach and interpretation to examine the evidence of our senses, our sight, touch, taste, smell, hearing. And so we go through life and we examine everything through the five senses only. Has anyone ever read the book Seed of the Soul? Okay, Alicia has. I lent it to her. But that book talks about the five sensory human being who only experiences life through the five senses. That is typically you're experiencing life through the egoic mind. And I talked about earlier in, I think it was There's a Solution. Maybe it was actually this chapter, I can't remember, where the more you are attached to the ego, the more God you need and the harder this is, okay? So it's like really important to look at where your ego is attached to belief systems and ideas. And a lot of people who have been through a lot of trauma really attached to the ego based on the five senses, okay? And also more than the five senses, because a lot of the trauma actually hits and damages the spirit. So the ego tries to protect itself, and so it becomes different than each other. Okay, some people's journey is harder than others, and that's just the way it is. So logic, it's great stuff. We like it, and we still like it. Okay, and what we're trying to get to is that intuition that's guiding us. But first, we got to see what's not God, what's not intuition. And there's a fine line between intuition and trauma intuition. Okay. A lot of us will fucking sit quietly and we fucking will listen to our intuition, but it's really based in fear. It's really based in the past. That's not intuition. That's still fear. And that is still self, and it'll guide you in the wrong direction. But to try to convince people of that is not fucking easy, because they believe that's their intuition. So over time, you will kind of be able to kind of throw that trauma intuition out the window and start listening to real intuition. But that doesn't actually happen, in my opinion, unless you're following the directions within our literature, and especially in step 10, because step 10 actually removes a lot of what's not God out of the way, the ego. So basically, I don't know how I'm saying this, if I'm saying it correctly. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that we were born and we're immediately using our senses. So we have, by the time we get to recovery, we have decades of practice. And so the sixth sense has always been there. So we have the five senses with decades of practice, and the sixth sense, that's always been there, but we've not practiced using it. So it's like when the term spiritual baby, that's what it is like, you got to think of like, you're coming and you're behind in the sixth sense, and you got to practice with it. And it takes practice, but in order to get the practice, you have to take the leap. And the leap is usually found in the things that a person doesn't want to do, not the things that they think they're intuitively inspired to do. So I've found for myself that, like, we just went through something with my mother, who I went off on guess we could call it a trauma or I don't know, an old wound, let's say. And I didn't call anybody really to double check what I was doing. And I went right down into this and thinking it was like, if it's meant to be, it'll be, and it will work itself out. And Bill's like, holy fuck. Like, if you would have called me, I would have told you, what the hell are you doing? And why didn't you call me? And I thought about it, and I thought, well, I suppose I would have heard that. And I guess there was a part of me that just wanted to go along with what this was, because there was a part of me that wanted that with my mom. And I was blinded to even looking at it. But in the moment, I felt like I was intuitively inspired. And, you know, I wasn't wanting to hear the truth after I reflected about it. And those are the times when, you know, I think that my sixth sense, if I would have been listening, I wasn't, but I jumped right on board. And I would have done it if I wasn't in a program with people who know me and know my history and know, like, you know, to pull the brakes for me when I'm not doing it for myself. But because the book says we're informed with like absurd ideas at times, because we're just practicing, we're just getting in touch with the conscious contact of God, so we can be inspired by what we think is that, but it's actually just ourself dressed up in all kinds of ways because we want what we want. And so it's important to really like double check things. And when you're off on and I knew it was bad, but in hindsight, I was like, holy crap, was it ever? And when we picked it apart, like, and no one else besides somebody in this program could have processed it and broke it down in the way that that we did that night. And, you know, there was a lot of levels to it, why I was just off on a tear of self thinking this was a good idea. And, yeah, so I mean, you can't see self from self, you know, we hear it all the time and we see it in ourselves when we see it after the fact. And so when that does happen to people and you really see that you were blinded thinking it was a intuitive thought, the best thing I can suggest is to be around people to process it and get to the levels of what was really going on for you.
Okay. So on that note, and that's a good example, one of the things that I had said while she was kind of giving us the data on that situation with her mom, the first thing I said, well, why didn't you call any pillars? And she said, I did. I said, do these pillars that you called know anything about your mom? She said, no. And I said, well, why wouldn't you call a pillar that knew something about your mom? And then she had to think about it for a second, right? Because I'm one of her pillars that knows about her mom, at least to some degree. And I would have been able to show her like, fuck, look at this part because it's really important. And that probably that whole situation, honestly, if she would have called me, it probably wouldn't have developed like it did. But it had to go that way. Why? Because she needed to collect the data that she did so that she could reflect on everything that had actually happened so that she could move now forward in a good way. So she wasn't getting in shit from anybody. She actually was the one who outed herself through the whole thing. And some of it, she outed herself unintentionally. And that's part of the benefit of using God-centered 12-step pillars and talking about it. So as she became alcoholic, as she was alcoholic in that situation, crushed by her own self-imposed crisis, she could no longer postpone or evade. It was put right on her. She had to fearlessly face the proposition as she moved forward that God was going to handle this or God wasn't. So then as that situation actually developed over the next few days, she had touched base with me and she said, my mom's messaging me and she wants me to respond. And I'm like, why do you think you have to fucking respond? She's like, well, I don't know. Do I? And I'm like, you haven't got the answer to respond. But because we're trained examining the evidence of our senses, what's that? Well, we're trained to respond when somebody asks. That's not what we are supposed to do. But we're trained in our society right from when we're kids. Okay, mom asks me a question. She tells me I want an answer and I answer. The teacher tells me, ask me a question, I'm supposed to answer. My whole life, I've been trained to, you ask me a question, I respond. My girlfriend asked me a question, I respond. But what about me fucking getting an answer where I actually respond with? Because most of my answers are reactions based in a fear because I don't want to be looked at a certain way or I'm scared of something. So now we move into a different realm and she like doesn't have to respond. And I had to like help her with that. Like, you don't have to respond. The answer hasn't come to you. Why the fuck would you respond? And then so she discerned on it and she waited. And then when the answer came, she replied with a message and she had to really look at the message she was sending so that it was based in love, tolerance, and boundaries within her own truth of self, right? So that was a process that stretched over some amount of time that was actually, you know, presented to her by self where she got crushed and pushed into the direction of God.
And I bring that up just because like this is where I'm at in after like a year and a half of really doing this. And that's only where I'm at, you know, where it's like this stuff, it's like you got to be so patient with it and just really keep trying. Because I remember, you know, being scared to take the risks way back and Phil saying to me, there are no mistakes. If you're just going to take the risk and do what you think you should do in this program when you sit with God and take the next step. And I kept saying, well, what if it's a mistake? He's like, there are no mistakes. And you just collect the data and then you keep going. And so that was really clear with this is like, I did collect so much data and very valuable. Like it now informed how I can move forward. And I have this new experience in recovery to speak with to my mom on the time whenever that happens to be, where now I have a new sober experience where before I didn't have that. I only had like this drunken stuff that I don't even know how she was acting and reacting to the drunken stuff. I have a clear example, real life, where I showed up in a way that I don't owe any amends. I just have some really concrete data now that I can speak to her and use that instead of using all this mishmash where she would have just said, but you were drinking and it was stressful and I didn't know how to handle all those things, right? So I got some really good nuggets to move forward with out of that. And just some more things, like I did a kind of a deep dive with my sponsor a couple of days ago around it. And there's just so many layers. And it's like, some of this stuff, it's a lifetime thing, where 6 and 7, it's like, this is over our lifetime. So people who beat themselves up that they're not getting this and then it's not coming quickly and things aren't like, this is only, I'm still fumbling around with this stuff, getting sideswiped by self. And it's you just got to be patient with it and pat yourself on the back for showing up and continuing to do this stuff, because there's no mistakes when you just show up and do this stuff. And it is slow. It's a slow moving process.
And one of the things that came out of us extracting this was she's still waiting for her mom to be this version of her mom that she's always needed, but she's never gotten. And that's kind of what the pull is. She's waiting for her mom to be this thing that her mom's not. And she may never be that. So like the self-delusion in that is really strong. And that came through, I think there was 4 pillars that kind of dissected that with you. And that was the main thing that you that catapulted this to happen like this. So, and that doesn't come on your own either, right? So anyway, arrived at that point, she's now squarely confronted with the question of faith. She can't duck the issue anymore. So many things were presented out of the situation that it's right in her face, right? Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason toward this desired shore of faith. So now she's using the evidence of her senses. She's looking at all the situation with logic and common sense and seeing the truth of the situation. So she's walking far over the bridge of reason and using the logic, reasonable approach and interpretation. But sometimes we got to be shown that too. What is some of the reason and logic? Her mom's not going to change. Her making these decisions out of self, her rationalizing, justifying, blah, blah, blah. We could go on. And then seeing it for what it is. So now we get to this point. The outlines and the promise of a new land. So now we're going to present her with the God approach, and we've all been through it. Her pillars that were there that night, a few of us have much more time than her. So we're more experienced. And the other thing I want to touch base on before we move on is the alcoholic wants relief super bad in these situations when they're all confused, right? They want the fucking relief and they want it now. So they'll go grasp and they'll look for the answer in so many fucking different things, right? And she's learned, keep your fucking circle small. Who is your fucking sponsor? Who is your pillars? And to stay within that. Because if we start going out everywhere to get the answer, we're just going to get more fucking confused. And the more confused we get by seeking out the answer from everywhere, we fucking create more untreated alcoholism. And then we will need more fucking relief. And if we keep doing that, we'll probably fucking pick up a drink at some point. And if not, we'll fucking be blowing our brains out because we're fucking going nuts. Anyway. So we'll just quickly read through this and keep going. New land to our luster tired eyes, fresh courage to our flagging spirits, friendly hands stretched out in welcome. We are grateful reason had brought us that far, but somehow we couldn't quite step ashore. That's really important. So she's at this point, and she kind of shared in her prayer today, she's tired of the confusion and the unknowing and the uncertainty. But somehow she couldn't quite step ashore. Perhaps she'd been leaning too heavily on reason that last mile and didn't like to lose her support. So she said in her prayer, she's relying on her pillars and the faith that we have so that she can take that leap of faith to shore, because part of her is still leaning too heavily on the logic, common sense, and reason that she's learned over her lifetime. And this area where she's fucking giving it up, it's really confusing. And when I work with people who are new or in their first year, they get to these places where they're so fucking confused because everything they thought they knew is not, it's wrong and it's not right, but they don't have the trust in God. So they get really confused on where they're supposed to be in the go. And like, that's really unsettling. And a lot of her journey, she's gotten to those places where it's really been unsettling. I've been through it too. I'm just more experienced. So it's not the same for me, right? That's why it's so important to have people ahead of you that can give you that faith. Because when you get to these places, and it's going to happen many times in your journey, you're going to be crushed by your own self-imposed crisis, and you're going to be shaken again, and you don't know what the fuck to do. My buddy Tommy last night, who I do my first session of my big book studies on my podcast with, he was at my house last night. He's going through fucking hell right now. And he's 5 years sober. He says he feels like a fucking newcomer. He doesn't know what to do or where to go or how to find any answer. But he did say, I quit going to meetings. I wasn't using any pillars. I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do. And I said, because you weren't dealing with the shit as the shit was coming up, because you were operating in self, now the shit's fucking dealing with you. He said, bang on. Because he wasn't running a program at 5 fucking years sober. And he knows what it is. But he was trying to grasp and manage his own life and fix it all himself. And part of us can even see that sometimes. So like, you're going to go through relationship stuff or job stuff, and you're going to see yourself grabbing and prying, and you're going to fucking have no power over even stopping it. But you got to try. Because the further you go down that, the worse it fucking gets. So
You said that I just wanted to say, I feel like I am at a place where I do trust in God, but I don't know what, like, the old ways are not applicable. So it's like I'm trusting, but I feel like I'm not getting any direction. So I'm just kind of doing the things, waiting for things to come together day in and day out. And I do have faith. It's just like,
I know
I'm ready for the next thing. And come on. But this is probably the next thing, is sitting in uncertainty and just being okay with it. Because sometimes I am, and sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? But
and we learn patience. And as Creator teaches us patience, sometimes we're like, okay, I can be patient for a week. And then it's 2 weeks. And you're like, okay, I can be patient for 2 weeks. Then it's a month. Now it's like, fuck, man. Like, really? Now it's 2 months. And then you're just like, what the fuck, Creator? Really? 2 months? Like, give me something here. But no, he's humbling you. I've learned in my journey, like, I can be patient a long time now. I'm talking like a year. I'm doing this thing with these people. Janine's one of them. Not many people know about this. I won't get too much into it. But I prayed on this for a fucking year and a half. I didn't make a move on this thing that I wanted to do for a year and a half. I don't make moves in my life until I know. And I'm really patient today. I can wait a long time. And I'm so patient, and Creator, like, have mercy on me, have pity on me. Don't like prove this to me, please. Like, I'm willing to give up my apartment and go live somewhere where I don't want to fucking live with, like, my mom or something, if I had to. Because that humility that I need to learn in that, for that lesson, wherever I'm supposed to be, I'll learn that. And I know, and I don't want to fucking do that, but I'm willing to do that, right? A lot of people aren't. So they'll grab and force and pry and create more harm in their own life.
I'm going to give this story because somebody had requested it, about the farmer. And I feel as though I'm in this farmer zone, and I go back to this story. So there's this farmer, and he has a bunch of land. The government owns the land. All he's got is this house and his son and a cow. And he owns the cow and that's it. And that's how he makes his living. And so one day his cow escapes and he's got no money. That was his earnings. And the community came around and he's like, oh my God, this is terrible. You know, your cow got away. What are you going to do? And the farmer's like, I don't know. Is it terrible? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. They're like, of course this is terrible. You don't have an income. Like you're going to starve. He's like, I don't know. So the son went off to go find the cow and he came back and the cow brought a couple buddies. And so now his income had like multiplied and he had several cows. Right. And so everyone goes, all the neighbors like, this is amazing. You got all this cows. You're rich. This is awesome. Farmer's like, I don't know. Is it? Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. And then the farmer's son was out doing something with them and he got kicked and he broke his hip. And the community comes around and they're like, this is so bad. And he's like, oh, what do you mean your son broke his leg? Like how, first of all, that's tragic. And how are you going to like take care of your cow and your farm? Like, this is really bad. So I don't know. And then the country went to war and the war people came and they overpassed on the son because he had a bum hip. And so the whole thing in that, and I think of this all the time. In fact, I don't even know how to answer when people are like, how are you? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm okay. I don't really know how to answer because I can never tell what's good or bad now looking back on things. I don't like when my daughter was apprehended, it changed my life for the better. And in the moment, that was the worst thing that could have ever happened. So it's like hard to know in a moment what's really going on. And so I just think like, I believe to my core that I'm in this like really uncomfortable, uncertain place, but I'm not like scared of things going wrong. If anything, I'm impatient and I'm confused and I'm scared of some health stuff, but that's like side note, that's not related. And I just think that this uncertainty period, when I get through it, I'm going to look back and I'm going to have like, okay, there was a moment where I could have went off track, or there was a moment when this was happening and that's why, or, you know, like I'm going to be able to connect a lot of dots looking back. So I just, in this moment, I know that it'll be for something, but I don't really know what. And I think a lot of our bad experiences are like that. So if you look at it like that story with the farmer, when you're going through something, to me, it just makes it more manageable and kind of exciting if you're having a good day with a good sleep.
Okay, let's keep going. Perhaps we'd been leaning too heavily on reason. That last mile, we did not like to lose our support. That's talking about self, our old ways, our old ideas, our old navigation ways. That was natural, but let us look more closely. Without knowing it, had we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith? For did we not believe in our own reasoning? Did we not have confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of faith? Yes, we had been faithful, abjectly faithful to the God of reason. So in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved all the time. So in the context of that paragraph in this chapter, in some certain ways, it's trying to teach an agnostic that you had a certain kind of faith anyway. You had faith in your own reasoning, in the world of the material and logic, common sense. So now, why can't you try to have some faith on another area, another thing, God, right? This unknown power. And it kind of alluded to that at the end of the step 0 promises, where we read last week, the step 0 promises on page 52. Was not a basic solution of these problems more important than anything? Yeah, I don't want the step 0 promises. I want something else. When we saw others solve their problems on a simple reliance upon a spirit of the universe, like, so for example, for me, you know, in the study, I really try to rely on God for my fucking problems. And I don't really fucking try to get my hands in there for the most part, right? So I'm one of these people that it's saying here, when we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon a spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. And part of Janine's like attraction to like my recovery was that. And some of the time she couldn't even believe that I wouldn't be fucking losing my mind over certain things or whatever. And I think that's like a consensus of people that I run into. They're like, how do you stay so fucking calm in the midst of all the bullshit that does happen? And it's almost like they don't even think bullshit happens in my life. But when I work with people and I share my experience of like the shit I've been through, they're like, holy fuck. And then they realize that I'm just like them, but I've been able to use that power and fucking really overcome a lot of these world of the material problems. And they don't bother me. And over time, those things can present themselves again because I've had experience with God and I understand it's only seemingly good, seemingly bad. And I don't really know what's fucking bad, as Janine was just talking about. I don't know what's good or bad. When I lost my wife, my kids, my house, my business, and I was fucking homeless 8 years ago, 9 years ago, that was the most terrible shit that could have ever happened to me. But it was shit that needed to happen or else I wouldn't be here today. So even though that was like the worst thing, my ego thought it was, but it was only pain of my ego because it was a process of allowed me to burn it down in those areas so I could become as willing as a dying man could be. As I was crushed by my own self-imposed crisis, arrived at that point, I'm squarely confronted with this question of faith. And that happens all through your recovery. And it's just a matter of, are you willing to look at the lesson in the terrible destructiveness of what your ego is going through? Because it's only ego pain. So, anything?
Keep going.
Okay. So only 30 years later, oops, wrong page. So we found two, that we had been worshipers. This is fucking some of the most serious pieces of We Agnostics here. So we found two, we had been worshipers. What a state of mental goose flesh this used to bring on. Had we not variously worshipped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves. So worships. So when we think of worships, we have an ideology of our sentiment of what we think worshiping is. And a lot of us, I think that worship is a bad thing. I know for me, I thought worship just meant like church or worshiping like an entity. Okay. So for us, it's kind of like the word selfish self-centeredness. When we first come here, we're like, fuck, don't call me selfish and self-centered. But then you stay here for a while and you're like, yeah, I'm fucking totally selfish and self-centered. Right. And when you get over the idea that that's actually a really bad thing and it's just a thing, it's like, I got fucking black hair. It's a fucking thing. I'm an alcoholic. The root of my problem is selfish self-centeredness. It's a fucking thing. Selfishness causes me all the pain in my life. It's a fucking thing. Not a big deal, right? So it's kind of like worship. What do you worship? Well, I always ask people what they worship when I work with them. Well, they're like, well, I don't know. I've never really thought about it. I'm like, well, what do you spend most of your time fucking thinking about in your life when you were a kid? Who'd you worship as a kid? Well, I worshiped for me, I worshiped Madonna. Okay. When I was really young, I loved Madonna. I had her plastered all over my fucking locker. And from that, I worshiped women that looked like Madonna. I worshiped women with dark hair. I worshiped all these things, right? So then I built this idea of what the woman was that I wanted in my life. And that was so perfect. I was too scared to ever go try to get that. So then I worshiped the fear behind it because I thought that was on a high pedestal that I couldn't have it. So then I worshiped the fear and I was never able to like move in the direction of, a woman that I actually wanted that maybe looked like that. So I worshiped many things, and a lot of people have trauma in their life. So they build their whole life around that trauma. Basically, they're worshiping the trauma, but they would never think that they worship the trauma. But when you peel back the layers of what they're worshiping the fear behind the fucking trauma. Okay. So what are we worshiping? People. Think about the people in your life that you worship. As a kid, was it men? Was it women? Was it sports people? Was it dancers? Was it porn stars? What type of worships did you have for people? Okay. Maybe it was ceremonialists. Maybe it was gang members. Maybe it was models. Maybe it doesn't matter. But think about what it was that you worshiped and what it was about them that you worshiped. And maybe you really knew nothing about it. And so we talk about unreasoning prejudice. Part of unreasoning prejudice is the opposite. You worship something just based on what you saw, examining the evidence of your senses over your life, but you know nothing about who the fuck they are. You're worshiping the idea, basically, of what you think they are or what you think they have, right? So variously worship people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves. Things. What kind of things do we worship? Cars, watches, clothes. Like there's dudes and women that get up in the morning and their whole life revolves around the opposite sex. And everything they do in their day revolves around the opposite sex. Okay, they're putting on the shoes, they're putting on their clothes, they're doing their hair. Why? So that they can look good to the opposite sex. They don't know that they're worshiping how they look, basically pomp. We call it pomp. They're worshiping pomp and how they fucking look. So they go to the store and they buy whatever, okay, a watch. How's that going to look to the fucking women at the bar? How's that going to look to the women at the big book study or, you know, wherever? And every part of their day revolves around the opposite sex. So they're worshiping what? Maybe the men or the women. Maybe they're worshiping their own lack of self-worth. So there's many layers to this, okay? But that's really important to look at because that's the root of our trouble. That's where self lives. That's where that third column in your step 4, when we get to the third column, after your first set of steps, the fourth column is really important for most of everybody for fucking 40 years of recovery. But then we're wondering why the fuck we're not healthy because we're looking at the fourth fucking column when we should be looking at the third column where the roots get deep down, where the problem arises from. That's more important later. What else do we worship? Cars, money, things, fancy shit, houses. So for me, when I bought my first house, it was pretty much $1 million house. I never owned a house before, and I bought this house because I wanted you guys to think I was pretty fucking special. And when I was building my business, I built it pretty much for you guys because I needed you guys to think a certain thing about me. So even when I bought my first really nice truck, I bought an 08 Dodge Laramie, fucking loaded to the nines with metallic, fucking it was beautiful. I'm driving this truck because I need you guys to fucking think how fucking awesome I am. Look at how much money I've made with this nice truck at my new house. But I'll tell you, 6 months of driving that truck and a year of having that house, I'm like, what the fuck did you do? You got like $15,000 worth of payments. Like, that's fucking insanity. And is there any guarantee that you can even make these payments? No, but at least I look good, right? And that's the insanity behind like the validation that I needed. And I'll tell you, I fucking worked to make sure I paid that $15,000 a month for those fucking like 7 years. But was I happy? Well, I thought I was going to be happy because I thought those things based on logic and common sense in the world of the material, that's how I was going to gain freedom. That's how I was going to take holidays with the money. I was going to be free with, you know how much fucking harm that caused me and my wife because I wasn't fucking happy and giving my wife $5,000 a month to pay the bills. And when it was fucking hard to give her the $5,000, you know who fucking heard about it? Her and my kids. And then the bondage of self was fucking tearing us apart from the inside. But we looked pretty good doing it. So there was a lot of like inner turmoil through all of what seemed outside appearances were not inside reality at all. I'm also going to talk about education and school. Because in schools and education, they teach you all this shit. Just get a job, man. Fucking here's what we're going to teach you when you're in kindergarten and grade 3 and grade 5 and grade 6 and grade 8. You get this job, you get this degree, you do all the shit, and you go out and you're going to be fucking happy. It's a fucking load of shit. And I'm not saying that having a good education isn't important, but when you don't have a choice of what you fucking learn or what they teach you in school, where's the freedom in that? For me, I wasn't a smart kid and I fucking had shitty marks my whole life. I had so much fucking guilt and shame in school because I didn't live up to what you guys fucking told me I was supposed to be. And I had to cheat to get like 50% and 60%. And like, so I'm creating shame upon shame upon shame because I'm not living up to society's ideologies of who I should be and what I should be. And because me and like my mom fucking, she spent everything she had. She was a waitress to give me and my brother all the shit that we had so that we looked good. So she suffered because she didn't want us to be judged. So she spent all of her money and her time giving us the stuff so that she felt okay, that we felt okay. Because society isn't really a nice place in many respects because they judge on these things, right? So, do you want to add anything and ourselves, Palm? You want to add anything before I go into another?
Yeah, I just want to stick up for education a little bit. I think that when you have faith and you have God as your guiding compass, I think that you can get educated and have discernment as to what is true and what isn't, and therefore you can go into the world and use the education in a way that matches and aligns with your faith and what you want to be doing with God.
How'd that work for you?
Well, I'm actually, I'll tell you, it didn't work when I didn't have faith. And
Right.
then what are the
What I'm
hours
saying.
of conversation that we've had that I'm like, this is so good because this framework has allowed me to discern and put on top of the things that actually are really useful. And I've been able to go through my brain and kind of put the things that match this and you know, they've been obvious because there's like some things that I've done in my career that really were effective, but it all lines up with this. Like one of the programs that I used to teach was called Connect, and it's like all attachment theory and empathy, and like it aligns with this so cleanly. And so it's been cool to see that some of my stuff matches this and it's been effective, and the rest of it, some of it sounds hokey pokey, and then it's been something that doesn't move forward with me. But also I was going to say that when I read that this paragraph, I was like, you know, like I have had some bad relationships that I just jumped into and didn't think twice about. So for me, it was like a no-brainer. Like if I could look back over my relationship history and be like, wow, I just really jumped in and worshiped that person or that outcome. I really clung to it. Like my marriage, say I wanted to make that really work. And I worshiped the idea of that. And so why couldn't I just try worshiping a faith, like a faith of some type? Like, why couldn't I apply the same thing? If I could apply it to a shitty relationship, I could certainly apply it to an idea of God and look for a higher power. And then I was just gonna say that my grandma would always tell me, your heart can't serve two masters. And it's true. And it's like, you know, you'll end up, and she said, you will end up loving one and despising the other. It'll always go that way. And that holds true.
So based on what she said, I agree with her, right? I'm not disagreeing. I'm here to disturb the person on the question of alcoholism. I'm here to make you think. I'm here to spark something in you that allows you to go a little deeper. And like in the book, in the 12th step, it talks about you disturb them on the question of alcoholism. This is all to the good. They then stand a better chance of accepting what we have to offer. And I want you guys to really understand what we have to offer through the inventory and really looking at ourselves and going deep. And out of these lines, so, you know, based on what she was saying also, with spirituality, she can walk that path, no fucking problem. Well, with less problems, let's say. Okay, with God, with love, with inventory, with pillars, But left to your own devices out there in some of this stuff, especially as alcoholics, it gets tough.
And
So,
that's because we're not our authentic self. Like
Mm-hmm.
recovery gives us that.
totally.
And a lot of people don't have an addiction. And so a lot of people don't have like a authentic self. They have a facade of imposed ideas from society or from school or from church or from their parents or whatever. But through the recovery process, I've been able to get closer to who I really was supposed to be without the brokenness and the defects of character, which makes it easier to navigate myself in the world in all ways. So
True. But as you get back into your work life,
yeah,
more is to be revealed.
stay tuned.
Right. Stay tuned. So on that note, a lot of people get into social work because their natural desire is to help people. So I'm just saying, like normal people, they get into social work and they go to help people. And then they realize they're in such a constraint environment where they're not actually able to help people because the system that it's built in doesn't allow the freedom of working with love because most of the system's based in fear. So the person who wanted to go and help based in their own love in social work, they end up becoming very fucking rigid and resentful and angry. And then they just adhere to how the policies are written. And then they become very shut off from the people they work with, or they become burnt out and they can't stay in the field because that system doesn't allow for the heart to work because it's based on a system of fear, control, pride, and things that aren't conducive to what we're trying to do. So in order to kind of change those systems, you got to be, work your way into like higher political structures within those systems to try to change, which is really hard, right? So out of this line, before we take a break here, it talks about the sentiments. The sentiments is the most important one out of all of those. Sentiments, does anyone know what sentiment is? It's ideas, ideologies. Every single thing in there is based in a sentiment. Everything you think, say, do, believe is based on a sentiment. And it's really important for you to ask yourself, what sentiments, what ideas or beliefs do you base your fucking lives on? Like everything is a sentiment. Are the sentiments, are the beliefs that you're living in, are they even yours? Or were they given to you by society? Were they given to you by your culture, your family? Where did they even come from? So I've done like a lot of step 5s in this program. The number one thing I see with the step 5s I've done is the person who I'm working with has never been able to be who they're supposed to be because they're trying to live up to somebody else's belief systems. So I'll use myself in that example. I couldn't be artistic in school because I had to be academic. I couldn't be First Nations because the world taught me that that was fucking not going to work out for me. So there was many things in my own path that made me dishonor my own consciousness, where when I dishonor my own self, I have to blot it out with something. And that I've seen that with every single person I've ever worked with. And when we look at people as they get into their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they have midlife crises, it's a pretty common thing. We've all heard of midlife crisis. Those are normal people that have had to fucking adhere to the societal belief systems or sentiments or whatever it wants, cultural, religious, that it doesn't resonate with who they are. So then they fucking leave the relationship or job or whatever. And that first it's everything exterior has to go. And then they go try to get new things from the external world, new relationship, new car, new job. But it's not an external problem. It's an internal problem that they can't see because they're so used to examining the evidence of their senses from the whole journey of life that that's what they think needs to change. Oh, it's their spouse's fault. It's their boss and it's their job. It's their car. If I can just get a new car, but none of that shit fixes you. So you got to like really look within. And that's the gift of this program. Like understanding like this is actually the greatest gift that I've ever gotten but I didn't know it while I was going through the pain, and I didn't know it through my early years of recovery. And I couldn't know it unless I did like the real work. And I see a lot of people in this program that have been here for years, and they don't understand what the fuck I'm talking about because they've been given the watered down version, and they're still looking at their fourth column and their step 4, 15, 20 years in here going, fuck, that's my defect. I need to get rid of that. Dude, you fucking needed to get rid of that like 15 fucking years ago on your first set of steps. Oh, you've only done 2 sets of steps? What the fuck are we talking about, right? So anyway, before we break, when we look at these worships, how do we get these worships in our brain? These worships we get through examining the evidence of our senses. These worships we get through pride, through fear, through the 5 senses. That's where we get this version of life.
You're saying through the feedback from other people, right?
Through our environment, period. We get this through the examining the evidence of our senses. And that's what we think life is. So we're going to take a break, and then we're going to kind of go into like the next phase of this, which is the deeper phase, the more important phase. So, hey kids, let's rock and roll. So we're going to still be on page 54, second paragraph. Just going to keep reading, keep talking. So what a state of mental goose flesh this used to bring on, had we not variously worshipped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves. And then with a better motive, had we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or the flower. Who of us had not loved something or somebody? So a lot of times what I do when I get to this part, when I'm working with people and at the studies, I go, okay, Janine, let's use you. What are your, if you were going to die today, what would be your 3 like most beautiful moments that on your deathbed you would cherish and take with you and know that those are always with you?
The birth of my son, my youngest son. Sorry, Jericho. The last game of Yahtzee I played with my grandma before I came to treatment. She passed in treatment. It's a hard question, Bill.
Yeah.
My dad, just my dad in general. Can that count?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. And give me your 3 favorite places on earth that you've been to.
I love the library.
Why?
Because it's quiet and because I didn't really have anxiety there. Everything felt like it was in control.
Okay.
My old church and sunrise.
Okay. Any of your favorite vacation spots that you can think of, 2 or 3? Or where you like to go and be connected to nature?
Do I know? I like going to Wassa Lake.
Okay.
That's enough.
One more.
Oh.
Nose Hill Park.
Sure. I like Nose Hill Park.
Okay. So when you think of those things, your grandma, game of Yahtzee, your father, your one son that was born, these places that you really like are at peace with, whether they be in Mother Nature, or even at that library. When you point on your body where those things come from, where is it? It's your heart. So on the first example of the things that we variously worship, money, sentiment, things, ourselves, that all comes through examining the evidence of our five senses, using reasonable approach and interpretation, watching TV, listening to other people, and our environment essentially. And we think that those are the things that are going to make us happy. But when we really look at what's important in our lives, she alluded to the things that are really actually important, right? And they don't come from the mind at all. They come from the heart, right? And then with a better motive, had we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or the flower. Imagine at your favorite vacationing spot when you're watching the sun come up or driving to work. One of the most beautiful moments of the day is seeing the sun come up or seeing the sun go down, right? Hitting Elbow Falls and just sitting there and hearing the water hit the rocks and splash. And maybe you see kids playing. Maybe you're at the park at Princess Island Park and you see people, you know, with their dogs playing Frisbee, or you see a little mom with their kid. And like, these are the moments, right? This is what the fucking fabric of our existence is made out of. So who of us had not loved something or somebody? How much did these feelings, these loves, these worships, these ones we're talking about right here, right now, have to do with pure reason, with logic, with our mind, with the five senses? Very little, right? Little or nothing we saw at last. Were not these things the tissue of which our lives were constructed? The tissue of which our lives are constructed. Think about what that is. Don't just read through this literature without examining what the fuck it's saying. Did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? It was impossible to say that we had no capacity for faith or love or worship. In one form or another, we had been living by faith and little else. So what we do is we confuse the ends with the means. We are taught that all of the things in our world that are supposed to make us happy is what we should go for. In the step 3, it talks about, is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? So that line in step 3 is actually exactly what we're fucking talking about here. I'm a victim. And the word victim, when you look it up in the dictionary, means somebody that's been tricked or duped. I've been tricked and I've been duped by the world of the material belief systems and the environment that I fucking grew up in. And my traumas and my journey through life. I've been tricked and duped of a delusion. What's a delusion? A delusion, the key feature of a delusion. It's an idea that I hold to be firmly true, but when I look at the facts and the evidence, it's actually not true. But then I believe it anyway. Knowing that that's not fucking true, I still believe it. That's a delusion. What are some of the delusions? Well, that women are going to make me happy. That money's going to make me happy. That the job and the status and the stuff is, and you accumulate all that stuff, white picket fence, the house, the equipment, the bank account, that stuff's all just going to make me happy and I'm going to be fucking good.
What you just said is really important too. I think, like, that when you start to catch on that it might be not working, instead of going, geez, let me take a look here, this might not be working. It says in the literature here that the actor doubled back. He goes back and he's like really trying frantically. He's really trying to figure it out. So instead of just saying, okay, this isn't working, it's like, we got to go try harder, and we try and we exert even more force, and we try to, and I think that really sums up a midlife crisis for a non-alcoholic, is that they get to a place, like, I think it's around the 35-40 year mark, when you've tried everything. You went and you got married and you got a house and you got a career and you got a kid and you got your kids, and your kids are turning 13, 14 and they don't want anything to do with you anymore. So now you're reevaluating the whole situation on, like, what am I doing with my life? I'm not feeling like this is it. And so I don't know. I think that everybody could get to a place where they would want to look at God, but instead, most people, because it's not a blow your life up, it's the slow burn. And in the slow burn, you don't even notice you're burning. And so you have time to just go get a truck and get your hair done and get a new relationship. And it's like, but we get to have addiction where we bring our lives to the ground and there are no options to grab at other things. So we have an advantage in that way.
And like to the point of relationships, most relationships, as we get into these relationships in our 20s or whenever we do, 20s, 30s, they're actually based on a value system based in those pomps and worships of these other things. So we really analyze, okay, what is this person? How can we make these other worships really work together? And then the ideal of love. So again, everything's based on a sentiment. The sentiment of what love is also based in your environment. A lot of what you think love is actually not what love is. It's based in possession. It's based in eroticism. It's based in control. It's based in manipulation. It's based in a lot of very unhealthy things that are based actually in fear. And it's not love at all. So that's the basis of a lot of these relationships that we get into. And then as you go through time, because the value system of what they're based on is in fear, they actually fail because you can't continually live in a relationship that's based in fear because you sell out yourself and the other person is being sold out as well. And then true love isn't the fucking basis, so they fail. Hence, more than 50% of all relationships end in divorce. And the other 50%, 25% of them, people stay in loveless relationships because they're afraid to take the chance because they're so much in fear of financial insecurity or the fucking, you know, the house and all of the stuff that comes with it. They'd rather just kind of eat away, rot away in a relationship that they're dead in and get to the end of their life and then it's over. And then there's that last 25% where they fucking will take that chance and they will break up. And whether they're woke or not, that's not, who knows, but that's how this goes. And you can look at all the facts because I can use the evidence of my senses. I can look at the data and show you exactly that that's true. And we all know that, most of us, because we've entered into those based on the world of the material and the environment, environmental sentiments that we've grown up into. But now we have the chance to actually enter true relationships based on authenticity, not just intimate relationships, but friendships and interactions that are real. And because when I fucking avoid conflict with Shane and I bullshit him about how I really feel, I never fucking avoid the conflict with Shane. Because the conflict's in my own fucking head. So when I avoid the conflict in my intimate relationship, I'm not avoiding the conflict in my intimate relationship. And I think that I'm just kind of keeping the peace. The peace is never kept because the fucking I go nuts in here. But how do I fucking overcome that? Well, the other person has to be willing to be vulnerable and have their pride being chipped away at too. But people aren't built like that because they're built based on the world of the material and those things that we read up here.
And a good relationship, you have conflict, but the conflict has a resolve and you feel respected and you feel heard. And then there's a positive change as a result of the conflict. So that's a healthy relationship. It's not the absence of conflict and it's not a lot of conflict. It's like that you have conflict, but that you come out of the conflict and you've grown closer together and you have more of a connection. I was also going to say that a lot of relationships, like people go into it thinking, what can I get out of it? And a lot of times, what can I get out of it looks like you are going to make me feel better. I need you to reassure me. I need you to love me. I need you to pay attention to me. I need you to tell me that I look good. I need you to tell me that this, that, and the other thing. I need all of my security from you. And so you can see how, like, going back to your heart can't serve two masters, all of that security is supposed to come from Creator first. And then you're a whole authentic person going into a relationship versus two people who are broken coming together to try and fix each other. But that is not sustainable. Anytime that you're grabbing outside of yourself, especially a human being, it is not sustainable. And you will, it's like, you know, I was explaining this to my daughter the other day, is like, with a relationship, it has to look like you're holding sand and not clutching at the sand, because as you're clutching the sand, you're forcing the grains out of your fingers and you're losing everything about it with your force. And so you've got to hold it just like this, and that should be what it's like. And so you need to, for a person to, not you need to, but people need to be their authentic versions, and you can't self-will authenticity. It doesn't, the you do you culture is so, it's a fail, because it's like, you do you is really, you go being self, you know, do what works for you. You do what works, and people don't know who they really even are to do you. So it's really difficult to get into a relationship. Like I was just talking to somebody on the break about relationships and early recovery, and why they are at the fail rate that they are. And it's because you don't have a chance to establish who you really are. And then, you know, what kind of fuckery is it that you're trying to figure out who you are while they're figuring out, or maybe they're not figuring out. Maybe they're just fucking around, not finding out. But, you know, you've got two things happening where recovery is already hard, and finding your authentic version of you takes, like we've talked about, a long time sometimes. So you've got two people trying to do that and try to piece themselves together, but they're piecing themselves together out of a place of love me, need me, validate me, fix me. So you can see the equation of that doesn't equal a good outcome.
Yeah, exactly. So as we go on these journeys, it's the saying that I have that I learned from somewhere. Everybody is going to sooner or later leave. Make the acquaintanceship with God, because God will never leave you. And as you get into relationships, friendships, and relationships on your journey of recovery, remember this. Don't fucking hold on to anybody.
Look at how hurt Shane's feelings are. His face is like this.
Don't hold on to anybody. You let the fucking emotional threads that of whatever it was that they used to give you, you snip those. And you let them go be. And you don't try to hold on to them for any fucking reason. And that is exactly the sand thing that she's talking about. You try to hold on to that, you end up fucking squeezing what it is that you wanted, and it gets through your fingers, and you don't have it anyway. So as you learn how to accept people are going to come and go, some people are only there for a day, week, month, year. Some will be there for the rest of your life, but that's not up to you to decide. How we keep the people in our life that need to be there is we're authentic with ourselves, with Creator, and then the people will either stay or they won't, and that's not up to me. And I live by that, and I know that because I've fucking done it, and I do it still today. I've held on to them, and I've squeezed them so they're gone, and I've learned how to hold them in my hand and honor them. So with my relationships today, with my friendships today, I try to like really honor that friendship. And I got to really be careful with how I'm interacting, because my pride can say certain things. So then I got to really ask pillars and talk, and then approach it in a kind and loving way, but also have my boundaries. So it gets confusing in your first like year, 2, 3 years. Emotional recovery is fucking hard, but you don't stop. And so I want to just touch on something quickly that Audrey was talking about. And that's normal. When you go that first year of fucking recovery, that's a fucking cinch, man. Like, I'm serious. It's a fucking cinch. Yeah, it's hard, but it's fucking easy too. Okay. Where it gets hard is in your second, third, and fourth fucking year. Because now you're dealing with shit that's coming up, and you don't know what the fuck is happening. And as God is now building with you and doing with you as thou wilt, there's a whole bunch of shit that's coming up, and you get into like states of you don't know what the fuck is going on. And you gotta fucking understand that that's part of the process. But because you've been indoctrinated with belief systems to avoid pain, you're gonna run around fucking trying to ease that pain with fucking relationships, with drugs, with doctors, with fucking other people, other pillars. You gotta understand that you gotta settle into that part of your journey and fucking grow through it. And going through it isn't fucking fun. But if recovery was easy, everyone would fucking do it. If healing was easy, everyone would do it. Healing's fucking hard because we've been taught to run away from the pain. Creator gave us the ability to deal with the pain and learn how to work with it. So Audrey, you know, last year she went through some shit. She's come in and there's highs and there's lows. And as we go through recovery, it's like this. But as you keep going through, it's more like this. And then you can fucking surf it out. And the thing about relying on God and not people is the tragedy's fucking coming for everyone in here. Everyone's going to either know someone that's getting sick or going to die, or you're going to get sick or going to die. So the tragedy's fucking coming for every single person. So make the acquaintanceship with God. Because if the alcoholic fails to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through the work, this hard work, and self-sacrifice for others, understanding self, sacrificing self through your 10, being of service, he will not meet the certain trials and low spots in life ahead. And if he fails to work, he will certainly drink. And if he drinks, he is certainly on the path of death again. So for those people who are getting well again and getting on with the business of being self-satisfied in their recovery, i.e. the world of the material, good things happening, jobs, relationships, fucking cautionary tale, just be careful. Because you can easily rest on your laurels and become complacent. And the definition of complacency is to be self-satisfied. You get satisfied with the way things are for you, and you are fucking headed for trouble. Service, inventory, sponsorship, doing the fucking things we need to do. I wish my buddy Tommy was here right now because he was a fucking disaster last night. 5 years. This is where people do fucked up shit. But you don't have to. You stay close to your networks. Stay close to your God. Stay close to your inventories. Do the things that we got to do.
I feel like Bill's version is like the death threat. Put the voice on the death threat version of recovery.
It is.
Now I'll give you my version, okay?
Yeah.
Mine's like this. If you pick up the kit of spiritual tools, you get to intuitively know how to handle situations which usually show up as people. You usually get to handle those in a way that you didn't know how before. And as a result, you get less drama and you get less pain. And you just can accept people that ebb and flow in your life. And you look at it like, oh, that was a lesson, or, oh, you're a best friend for, you never know. You never know if you're going to see somebody again. And so if you look at it like everybody's there for a purpose in this moment, and you just get to be present because you're not pissing around up here with stupid shit from all your peopling. So if you just like, so it's like, instead of do this and die, it's like do this and you just actually get to have a clear mind that allows you to be present, and you really truly get to go through things in a way that is revolutionary to this day and age, because people don't go through things like we get to. And it takes practice. And if you don't do it, you get pain. So it's like.
And in 8 years, when we're doing the study again, she's going to be like, do this or die.
The topic, Shane, of when I was in his book study with the same expression, when he's like, everybody will leave you. We're all going to die. I was like, so then I brought it up with him. He's like, nope. Oh, that's what I think. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I think that we're born into connection and we're meant to have attachment with one another. It is our instincts, as it says in the 12 by 12. We need to have connection. And it's just like, we don't know who we're supposed to have connection with. But I look at it like I'm supposed to have attachment and connection, period. And whoever is in that realm for me today is who's supposed to be there. I show up as present as I can be. I try and be as loving and kind and truthful as I can in my interactions, and grateful for everybody that's in my circle. But I don't attach to it because life shifts and it's not a goodbye. It's like a new chapter when people shift and change. Yeah, Bill. We're all gonna die.
Well, when you've seen enough people die like I have. Anyway.
Anyways, we're saying the same thing.
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay.
Bottom of 54. Imagine life without faith, where nothing left but pure reason. It wouldn't be life. But we believed in a life. Of course we did. We could prove life in the sense that you can prove a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points. Yet there it was. Could we still say the whole thing was nothing but a mass of electrons created out of nothing, meaning nothing, whirling onto a destiny of nothingness? Of course we couldn't. The electrons themselves seem more intelligent than that. At least said so the chemist. Hence, we saw that reason isn't everything. Neither is reason, as most of us use it, entirely dependable, though it emanate from our best minds. What about people who proved that man could never fly? Yet we'd been seeing another kind of flight, a spiritual liberation from this world. People who rose above their problems. They said God made these things possible and we only smiled. We had seen a spiritual release, but like to tell ourselves it wasn't so. Actually, we were fooling ourselves. For deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, pomp, and worship of other things, but in some form or another it is there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. We finally saw that some kind of God was part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was as much of a fact as we were.
I can't even, you made that a threat too. I would totally read that like, sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. You're like, but he was there. Okay, go.
We found the great reality deep down within us. It was in the last analysis. It was only there that he may be found. It was so within us. So back to the top of that paragraph, we're 2 paragraphs up. Actually, we were fooling ourselves. Deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. That's kind of what we were getting to on the previous page. On what is actually driving our lives. What are we actually here for? What is the fabric and the tissue of our existence? It's based in love, right? And that fundamental idea of God, which is love, is within every man, woman, and child. But it's often obscured, means just blocked off. Like, doesn't mean like totally blocked off. It means like you can see pieces of it, I guess. By pomp and calamity, worship of other things. Well, it's the, where is it here? Obscured by calamity, pomp, and worship of other things. So it's the pomp of self and the worship of those other things that we talked about that actually create the calamity. So what we need to do and what we do in this program is we go through the processes of the inventory and we clear away all the shit that's not God. Resentments blocks us off from the sunlight of the spirit. Fear gets in the way. And the way that we act in pomp, in self, in the relationship conduct really blocks us off too. But a lot of those behaviors and why we are like that is based on the environment of the world of the material. People live in resentment, fuck. That's how it works. I can show you the fucking news right now, right? It's all over social media, resentment. It's all over social media, fear. And how we interact with people. We're mind and emotionally manipulating people so that we can get shit from them. It's not a culture of giving and love and kindness and forgiveness. That's not what it is. So in a sense, what we do is counterculture. It's really like a really small, tiny percentage of people that are trying to live this way of life. So in many instances, as you kind of engage with life out there in your environment, it doesn't make sense and it's hard to bring God in. While you learn how to do that, and you will learn through your own authentic self how to fucking do that. And the thing about like working in the world of the material is, as you raise consciousness, your thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when your thinking is cleared of wrong motives. You put yourself in the realm of other people that are doing that as well. So you're not dealing with all the bullshit on the lower levels of consciousness like you did most of your life, because you are raising your level of consciousness and water finds its own level. So you find those people and you interact with them. And then when you have to interact with somebody on a lower level, you can sell out your integrity. Go ahead. Go fucking take a job where you sell out your fucking soul. See how fucking that goes for you. You know, get in a relationship and hold on to that where it's fucking you're selling out your soul. You end up not being able to do that Because once you taste God in these upper levels, you can't go back down. And the thing about people at the lower levels is they can't understand where you're at anyway. They can, and they'll judge you for thinking you're better than them, or that that you're an asshole now, or they're going to judge you because they don't know any better. And that's really where love and tolerance of others kind of comes, right? You'll see other people's shortcomings, viewpoints, and respect for their opinions or attitudes that make you more useful to others, because you are fucking useful to others if you're trying to be. So anyway, let's keep going.
Can I narrate?
Finally, yeah, go ahead right here. Finally saw.
Didn't we just read that?
Yeah.
We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was part of our makeup, just as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there.
Okay, stop. Sometimes you got to fucking search fearlessly. You got to look deep, but he is there. And it's fucking painful, Audrey. It's hard.
Shanda.
Like, it's hard shit, man. But you don't stop. You don't give up. You don't go the other way. You stay close. And you do this stuff.
Do you want me to keep reading here?
Yeah.
Okay. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and a miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search, fearlessly, but he was there.
Give you one job. Give her one job.
Hey, you reread things like 8 times, okay? Like, I don't know where we are. He was as much a fact as we were, but we found the great reality deep down within us. In our last analysis, it was only there that he may be found. It is so with us.
Okay. Last analysis. This is the last place you ever fucking thought of looking, was right here. Our whole lives, we've been looking everywhere for God. And in the intimate relationships you've been in, that feeling that you have, like seeking love, that's actually a fucking longing for God. Doing the drugs that we do and getting that fucking hit, it's a longing for God. And that's why we go from relationship to relationship, and we're hoping that it's going to be the next one, because that feeling that you're fucking get from Creator, you find pieces of that in the relationship. The only problem is because there's so much fear in it, it doesn't fucking survive. But it's really like a longing for God. So it's the last place you ever look, right? And you don't need to go looking for it, because it's right fucking here. Okay.
We can only clear the ground a bit. If our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself, then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you.
Okay, stop. Okay. If we can only clear the ground a bit. Testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself. Then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway with this attitude. What's the attitude? God, love. So with that attitude, you can't fail.
Truth.
The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. So that paragraph is essentially talking a lot about your steps, the step 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and your 10. This paragraph is really highlighting the 10, but it highlights all the steps as well. Thinking honestly, like getting fucking honest with what and who you are. Searching diligently. Let's peel back the layers within ourselves. And finding God on the broad highway. And I want to kind of lay it out like this, if we can clear the ground a bit. So we're Albertans. We all know what drilling rigs are, right? Set up a drilling rig. The bulldozer comes onto the site and it pushes all the topsoil away. So we're clearing the ground a bit. Okay? We make a lease site, and then the rig comes in and they plop the rig onto the lease site, and they put the towers up, and then they start drilling. And they're drilling through, but what do they use to drill with? Anyone?
A bit.
Okay, what's on the bit?
A diamond.
Diamonds. Okay, it's diamonds are on the bit. In the step 7, where it talks about
Thank you.
this precious gift talks about humility, of being a precious gift. That's what humility is. It's the diamonds on the bit. So when we start cutting through our step work, we're cutting through the earth, we're hitting rock and shale, we're hitting fucking all sorts of things that are making this bit work. And then sometimes the bit snaps off, maybe the stems break. And these guys going for that resource, they don't stop, right? They keep going no matter what. They'll spend whatever amount of money to get what's in there. And then they fish out the bit, they put the new bit on, and they keep going. That's what the steps are doing. It's cutting through resentment, it's cutting through fear, it's cutting through your relationship conduct, and it's going down and it's going down. And eventually these guys cut through all those layers. Could be a year. Sometimes they use these drills to drill out this oil. And then they finally hit the oil. They pull out the drill stem, and then what do they have? They have this fucking supply of inner resource. It's a resource, right? It's oil or gas. Well, we use the same bit. Ours is humility. It's fucking pain and humiliation, going through our pride, cutting through all the bullshit. And we hit our unsuspected inner resource, which is God. And that supplies us with all of the resources that we need. So when we go back into the world, we don't need the resources that the normal person needs to get whatever it is that they need. Like, we're always like, well, I can't do that. I don't have the proper resources. You can have anything you fucking want because you got the one resource that's been untapped. And now you can have anything because this resource will provide you with every resource. As you work for God and the people now work for you, and the resources get delivered upon you. Does that make sense? That's what this program does. It cuts through all that shit, okay? Why is it unsuspected? Because it's only in the last analysis. It's only there that he's found. It's the last place that you look. It's unsuspected. We always look for God in things, in other people. And the last place we ever thought to look was right within our own selves. That's why it's an unsuspected inner resource. And then we find it. Then it's an endless supply. And when you think of the word source, which is creator, this is a resource, the unsuspected inner resource. So it connects to source, and everything is actually God, right?
In this book, you will read the experience of a man who thought he was an atheist. His story is so interesting that some of it should be told now. His change of heart was dramatic, convincing, and moving. Our friend was a minister's son. He attended church school where he became rebellious at what he thought was an overdose of religious education. For years, thereafter, he was dogged by some trouble and frustration, business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide. These calamities in his immediate family embittered and depressed him. Post-war disillusionment, ever more serious alcoholism, impending mental and physical collapse brought him to the point of self-destruction.
Step zero promises.
One night, when he was confined in a hospital, he was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. Our friends gorged rose as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." But later, alone in the room, he asked himself this question: is it possible that all the religious people I've known are wrong? While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came. It crowded out all else. Who are you to say that there is no God? This man recounts that as he tumbled out of his bed to his knees, in a few seconds he was overwhelmed by a conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide at flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of the infinite power and love. He had stepped from the bridge to shore. For the first time, he lived in conscious companionship with his creator. This was our friend's idea of God fixed into place.
No.
Nope, thus was our friend's. Is that what you're wondering?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, oops. I have it written in my book. Thus was our friend's idea of God fixed into place. No later vicissitude has shaken it. His alcoholic problem was taken away. That very night, years ago, it disappeared. Save for a few brief moments of temptation, the thought of drink has never returned. And at such times, great revulsion has risen up in him. Seemingly, he could not drink even if he would. God had restored him to sanity.
Okay, stop. Okay. So I'm going to reread that. This is where Bill has a spiritual experience. Bill has the profound spiritual awakening. Okay. He has the fucking big, huge spiritual awakening. It's one of the most important parts of the whole big book right
Why
here.
didn't you just cut me off then?
So he tumbled out of the bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by the presence, conviction of God. It poured over and through him, certainty, majesty, great tide of flood. The barriers, the judgments, the ideas, the belief systems, everything that he fucking had, the barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from bridge to shore. So he's like turning his will and his life over in one big moment, okay? He had stepped from bridge to shore. For the first time, he lives in constant companionship with his creator. Thus, our friend's cornerstone, not his idea of God, his cornerstone was fixed in place. Way back earlier in the We Agnostics, I talked to you and I said, circle the cornerstone because it's important. The cornerstone is the idea of God. And when the cornerstone is fixed in place, you are turning it over to God. So a floating cornerstone with just an idea of God is the theory of fucking God. But when Bill had his big spiritual awakening, he fucking fixes that in place. Now he can build his spiritual structure because he's turned it over. We turn it over one circumstance at a time. So that's really important because, anyway, no later vicissitude has shaken it. No life's happenings has shaken that cornerstone and his belief in God. Nothing. Okay. And that's important because if the alcoholic fails to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through the work and self-sacrifice, he will not meet the certain trials and low spots in life ahead. So nothing will shake it for Bill. Okay. His alcoholic problem. So the drinking problem was taken away that fucking night years ago. Why? Because when you turn your will and your life over, the fucking result is you won't fucking drink. The problem is with most people in the program is they don't know how to turn it over because it's so fucking watered down based on a theory and no one understands step 10 that people drink again. And they think that they fucking have God in their life, but God's fucking a theory. Except for a few brief moments of temptation, the thought of drink has never returned. So when you get to step 10 or we get to step 10, remember he recoiled as from a hot flame. That's what it's talking about, except for a few brief moments of temptation. The thought of drink has never returned. At such times, a great revulsion has risen up in him. That's not only with the drink, that's with the defective character. You won't want to act in that defective character because your consciousness level has risen up so high, you can't fucking act like that anymore. But it doesn't happen unless you do the work and you learn how to turn it over. And it happens over time working your step 10. Seemingly, he could not drink even if he would. He couldn't even fucking drink if he wanted to. God has restored his sanity. Okay, we talk about God restoring our sanity to the drink. What actually is happening is Bill's turned his will and his life over. Me running my life is insanity. God restores me to sanity if I understand how to turn it over. Because me running my life creates the insanity. What is this but a miracle of healing? That's important. Because this whole fucking journey is a journey of healing. Yet its elements are simple. Circumstances made him willing to believe. As you go through your life, are you willing to fucking have God come into that circumstance? And are you willing to believe that God can help you in the circumstance? And sometimes, let's say out of 1,000 fucking circumstances of the exact same situation, you bring God into all 1,000 of those, and you might heal that fucking broken part of you. It might take 1,000 times though. Maybe it takes 100 times. It's all dependent on how willing you are to fucking let it go and learn that fucking lesson.
I think, yeah, the circumstances being willing to believe is, I read that like you're going to get some self-imposed crises happening and those circumstances are going to make you willing to believe. And I found that putting every single defect or circumstance goes through the ringer, and I experienced the emotional turmoil before a surrender. And it's that emotional turmoil that I think is a circumstance for me. Like the circumstance is the emotional turmoil. And being in that emotional turmoil, I have two choices. Do I continue on in that shit, or do I turn it over and do something different?
And you can learn through that pain, or you don't have to. But you bring God into the circumstance. That's the miracle of healing. He humbly offered himself to his maker, then he knew. That's a step 7 line out of the original manuscript, okay? He humbly, on his knees, holding nothing back, offered himself to his maker. Why? Because he's in full fucking surrender mode. He's in full surrender. That's what step 7 is. He humbly, on his knees, offered himself to his maker, holding nothing back, like fucking tears in his eyes. God, you have me. Think of the step 7 prayer. I am now willing, God, that you have all of me, the good and the bad. I now pray that you remove every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you, God, and my fellows. Grant me strength, God, your strength, as I go from here to do your bidding. And the word bidding means to surrender in an overly slavish way. What does slavish mean? Overly slavish means without original thought or idea. You fucking surrender to God's love with no fucking thought or idea of your own. That is without reservation, because we always have a reservation going down the path. What am I going to lose? What am I not going to get? But once you get to that level of surrender where you don't need to think and there's no reservation, you're fucking there, man. And then he knew. What did he know? He's so surrendered. He knows God's got his back no matter what. This guy doesn't fucking need to worry ever in his life. That level of surrender, very few people can attain. But that's what we're talking about. That's what this book is fucking teaching us. So when people say, oh, I've done my steps, I'm going to go look over here. No, man, it's right here. You make this the foundation. You read these other books. You do some other things. You bring that knowledge back to here and watch this book fucking just explode your fucking world. So even so, God has restored us to our right minds. To this man, to Bill W., the revelation was sudden because he had to sudden turn over to God. Some of us grow into it more slowly.
Most of us.
Most of us. Some of us.
Most though.
Grow into it more slowly. He has come to all who have honestly sought him. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. So that's about us. Am I seeking this? Am I doing this? Or am I just providing lip service? Are my spiritual disciplines real or are they not real? What am I doing? Am I really trying this? And that's it. Thank you, everybody. That was fun.